Robert Griffin III doesn't need to risk further hurting himself to finish off what's become a lost season. I don't think he's been healthy from the start of this season. So sit for the last 3 games. And the reality is, I would like to see them showcase Kirk Cousins, who certainly had his moments a year ago, for trade. But the deeper issue here is the psychological warfare operating just under the surface in Washington. RG3 versus Shanahan. And this isn't 20/20 hindsight on my part. You know and I know, I questioned before, not before, but the day after that draft, why did you trade up to take a young stud, potential star quarterback with the 2nd overall pick, and then a little later in the draft, take a guy that you, Mike Shanahan, loved, Kirk Cousins, a same-age rookie quarterback? I don't think it's fair to Robert Griffin III. It's not like he's Josh McCown, age 34, who long-term is no real threat to RG3. Same age. I went through this in Dallas with Troy Aikman and Steve Walsh. A couple of years in, Jimmy Johnson finally said, okay, enough. I'll trade Steve Walsh. And he got a 1, 2, and a 3 for him and cleared the decks for an Aikman who had really struggled to that point to finally take off. In this case, is Shanahan doing this to sort of get back at RG3, to stick it to him? Is he doing it to push Dan Snyder harder to fire him? I don't know, but you can read all sorts of things into it because it's an unhealthy situation. And I, for one, hope that Dan Snyder oversees the trading of Kirk Cousins to clear the decks next year for RG3.
My response to that is I completely disagree with you. I don't like the fact that RG3 is being benched for the last 3 games of this season. I think that, you know, just like everybody else has to go out there and put themselves on the line, this pacifying, this overtly protecting RG3 at all costs, I think is part of the problem that has existed in Redskin Nation. You've got reporters accusing RG3 of having hijacked the franchise. You've got Mike Shanahan, who, in my opinion, clearly put all of this stuff out about him cleaning out his office. His camp definitely is responsible for the stories that have come oozing out of Redskin camp over the last several days. There is no doubt in my mind he will not be the head coach of this franchise next season. He's out. As a matter of fact, I believe the moves that have been made in terms of the disseminating of information by his camp is a clear effort for Shanahan to get fired so he no longer has to work while collecting the rest of his salary for this season and the $7 million next season. But it still doesn't negate the role that RG3 has played. And I've said this to several people who called me on RG3's behalf just yesterday, Skip. He is primarily responsible, or brand RG3 is primarily responsible for all of this. He came in all in for week 1, talking about when he was coming back. I remember when he said he would be all in for week 1 and he told everybody he was playing that Monday Night Football game against the Philadelphia Eagles. It was before he had okayed it with his very own head coach. The list goes on and on. There's been a multitude of moves by himself, by RG3's father, by his brand managers or whomever else didn't coach him properly or whatever, or just exploited the kid. They sat up there and they made a concerted effort to make him the face of the Redskins franchise when there was absolutely no effort whatsoever required for him to do so. And as I articulated to a supporter of RG3 yesterday, when I said his name will be synonymous with a coach killer, I am not calling RG3 a coach killer. I do not believe the stuff that he did was consciously or intentional. But his actions ultimately contributed to the frustration that exists inside the Redskins locker room and definitely with their coaching staff. As a result, it built the already fractious relationship one would surmise Mike Shanahan already had with owner Daniel Snyder. And as a result, he came across to some degree as a prima donna that was spoiled, that was given the keys to the franchise and the city and everything like that, and exploited it to the max in the eyes of critics. So because of it, once Shanahan walks out the door, he is going to be perceived as the dude who assisted in pushing a head coach out the door. And when you are a 23-year-old athlete, okay, and you contribute to a coach being unceremoniously dismissed, then that's the way it's going to be perceived. Accuracy aside, because I don't know that to be a fact, but we all know how it looks. And the only thing that's going to enable RG3 to escape that is if he's in love with his next coach and they're winning with him. Outside of that, his name will be synonymous with that of a coach killer, whether he likes it or not.
So are you suggesting that a second-year quarterback who never quite got healthy from full knee reconstruction should be effectively punished by having to play the last 3 games with the rest of his team?
I don't look at it that way, Skip. I look at it as if you were healthy enough to play up to this point, then you know what? Just like everybody else has to go out there, you should have to go out there too. That's the way I look at it. And I'm not faulting RG3 about that because he didn't make the decision to pull himself. This is Shanahan's decision. But don't tell me that Shanahan is looking out for the best interests of RG3 when you see these stories that have been leaking out, and we all know he's on his way out the door. All of a sudden, you care about this boy's feelings, his health, and what's in the best interest of a franchise you're actually trying to leave? Stop it. It makes no sense whatsoever. The dots do not connect. It is clear what is transpiring here, and as a result of that, don't tell me that Shanahan all of a sudden has become the second coming of Gandhi, where he's just oozing with compassion and empathy and sensitivity towards RG3 and the Redskins franchise. He ain't thinking about them. He's doing whatever it is that he wants to do, and the last thing he's thinking about, in my opinion, is what is in the best interest of RG3.